Hey Carla, thanks for meeting me for dinner. I really appreciate it. I need some advice. That's why I called you. I've had a lot of people approaching me about how to format their resumes, and it's been a really long time since I had to put one together. I know you deal with that a lot at your school, so I thought maybe you'd have some tips or information that I could relay to them to help point them in the right direction.
Yeah, sure. I do deal with a lot of those at the school. A lot of our students are looking to get their first job in the restaurant industry, and I try to teach them how to tailor their resume specifically for a chef or restaurant manager, because they tend to have a lot less time on their hands, so you need to get their attention a little bit quicker than a traditional resume would. So I even tell them to kind of relate it to a menu, where you're letting on that one piece of paper know you're letting that chef or restaurant manager know what you have to offer and get their attention so that they call you in for an interview.
So know your audience and relate it to something that you're familiar with to help you figure out the format.
Yeah, exactly. So here we've just been served our first course. This is the amuse-bouche. So this is how I can start relating it to the resume. The amuse-bouche is a gift from the kitchen, from the chef. So this is kind of where the chef starts to let you know what you can expect. So that's why on the resume, I would refer this to your header. So this is where you're gonna have your name, your address, and your telephone number, as well as your email address. And something to keep in mind is to make sure your email address is a professional email address and that you check the emails. And also your cell phone, your voicemail needs to be a professional outgoing voicemail message, and you need to check your voicemails. So here with this course, we've just been served the appetizer. So the point of an appetizer is to whet your appetite. So going back to referring this to the resume, this is where you'd have a section called your objective. So you want to let the reader, which would be the chef or restaurant manager, know why they have this piece of paper in their hands. So you need to just simply state what the position is you're looking for. And it's always good to incorporate in that objective that you are a culinary student or a graduate, because it lets them know that you've made this investment as a career choice. But then just let them know what the position is you're looking for. Whenever you have the opportunity to customize it, like if you know it's for a specific chef or specific restaurant, it's always great to incorporate that and be that specific. I'm looking for an entry-level position at Olive and June. You can actually put that in there that lets them know that you took that extra step.
Do you find it's better to aim high with your goals of what you want to work to, or like you mentioned, entry level? So would that be something that would be ideal to sort of show some humility and say I'm entry level, or say that I'm capable and like you're going after a bigger position?
Well, that's a really good question. Actually, be fairly realistic. If you have no experience, you're going to want to say entry level, but it's okay to incorporate that your ultimate goal is to become a chef, or your ultimate goal may be to own your own restaurant. You can say that too, but just be realistic with, where your current abilities are and what that position is. If it's not entry level, if you're already ready to be a line cook, you can say, I'm looking for a position as a line cook, but just be realistic. Or if you're responding to a specific job opening, again, being realistic that you think you're capable of applying for that job. Then list that exact position, exactly how it is in the job post. So again, it's another opportunity to customize it and let them know it's not just a standard resume. So with this course, now we've been served the main course. This is the meat and potatoes of the main entree. So this is where I'd reference it to the resume. This is where you're going to tell that potential employer everything that you bring to the table, what you have to offer, what your strengths are, what your skills are, but more importantly, they want to know what your work ethic is. So in this section, you can call it your professional profile, you can call it your professional highlights, whatever you want to define this section, because you're going to let them know who you are as an employee. So one of the key things is this whole section should be in present tense. If this is, a skill or, an attribute that you have, if you have it today, you need to state it like this is something you have now. And you bring to the table now versus a past tense. Because if you can still do it, that's what you're trying to tell them. So you can just kind of bullet point, powerful bullet points, letting them know, what these strengths are, the attributes are.
Getting in the spirit of this menu thing, we talk about portion size. Can you ever go too far or overdo the information? As in serving too much food to somebody?
Actually, in my opinion, no. I think that if it really is who you are and you really are, worthy of listing a really long list, as long as, they actually relate to something that would be a strength in the restaurant industry, would be a strength to a restaurant owner or a chef, then if that's who you are, then you need to shout about it. You need to be your own cheerleader because you're here selling yourself on this piece of paper.
And what do you tell somebody that's having trouble finding their voice or describing their self?
I think a good example, because it's always hard to be, your own cheerleader. Example is if you have the opportunity to ask your family members or anybody you've ever worked with or worked for, say, how would you describe me as an employee? Because a lot of times they can help give you those words and reflect back to you, and sometimes they may tell you about some weaknesses, which is good to know, but as far as what you want to put in this section of the resume, they can help give you those adjectives that truly describe what kind of an employee you are.
So are there any keywords or buzzwords that you would typically make sure to get in there that people look for specifically?
Well, there are some things when you're describing yourself, you wouldn't want to just say, hey, I show up for work on time. You say something like, I'm reliable. When you're addressing a skill that you have, you might say, proven successful at my knife skills, or I have introductory experience with meat fabrication. So if you're getting really specific, but lead in with a powerful statement about you, again in that present tense, but this is a statement that you team-oriented, but you're also able to work well independently. But you can even say, introductory experience with is okay because it lets them know. I mean, you're a student and you have started to learn and ready to start applying it, in a job. But still, don't shy away from those things. It's also a good idea to highlight the things that you are passionate about. So, for instance, if you hope you never have to bake bread ever again once you learned how to make it in school, I would not put on a resume that you're a great bread baker. You should actually highlight those skills that you're actually hoping to incorporate in your career.
Is there a fine line between talking about yourself to where it's going to come, I'm going to say BS, but where it's going to come across as BS to where people can read through it?
It could. Keep in mind that everything that goes on this resume, you need to be able to back up in person in that interview, and then once you start working the job. So it will come through. It will be obvious if you have, blown that out of proportion. But they may try to. I think a lot of chefs are good at, if they think they see through that, they're kind of good at trying to bring that out of you in an interview. They were interested enough with what was on the piece of paper to call you in for an interview. So just always, don't put stuff on there you think they want to hear. Put stuff on there that truly is about who you are, and know that you're going to be able to continue to sell that and prove yourself in the interview. Mm-hmm. So here we've been served the salad course, which in a traditional French serving, you would have the salad after the main course. So just going back to the resume again with the salad course, now we're just going to kind of wrap up and follow up with what we've already had so far throughout this menu and throughout the resume. So this part is where you would list your education. So obviously you're going to start, most recently, you're going to put the Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts and list the location. So in this case, Austin, Texas. And again, in keeping with the tone of staying in the present tense, you want to, rather than reflect how long you've been in the program, you want to say when you expect to complete the program. And since you don't always know your exact completion date, you can estimate and say, I'll be finished in either the first quarter or in the spring. You can kind of reference upon an approximate time of the year and you'll be finished with the program.
Do you only want to talk about your education level as far as it relates to the field that you're applying for, or any collegiate or any high school education pertinent to the resume?
Actually, that's a really good question. As far as the high school goes, since our program and most culinary schools require you to have completed high school with a diploma or a GED to enroll, then it's not necessary at this point to include high school. However, there are some high schools that have a really intensive culinary program. So if you went to one of those schools and went through the culinary program, then you would want to include that because you studied culinary at that point. But other than that, you wouldn't necessarily want to include it. If you've done any other previous education prior to high school or after high school, prior to coming to the Escoffier school, you just want to just make sure you include things that you finished. So if it's a degree or a certificate, or it's a study that you actually started and completed, then it's perfectly all right to include that and show just your continuing education. But I don't recommend including a school or a degree that you started and you changed your mind. If you didn't complete it, it doesn't necessarily doesn't prove you very well if you didn't complete the program. So
What about like special programs or seminars, things you may have attended that are relevant but may not apply to a formal education per se?
Sure. Well, especially at the school, we have a lot of extracurricular activities and clubs and a variety of volunteer opportunities. If you've been involved in any of that at the school, this is the perfect place to include it. Just after you've listed out the August Escoffier School of Culinary Arts, go ahead and include those extracurricular activities, as well as once you've gotten your ServSafe certification, include that under your education, because chefs like to know that you have received that certification. That means you passed the test. If you have been selected as a student ambassador, you want to include that. And like I said, any extracurricular activities or volunteer opportunities, it just lets them know, just how dedicated and serious you take this, and, you want to be part of the industry. All right, and now we get to dessert. So again, going back to referencing the resume, the dessert is like the icing on the cake. So don't worry if you haven't gotten a lot of experience within the industry. That's okay, because in this point of the resume, you will have already sold yourself in that whole professional profile in that earlier section. Typically, if you've sold yourself really well in that part, by the time you get to the dessert, it's not as important. So don't get caught up on not having a lot of previous experience. But in this part, this is where you're just going to list the places that you've worked before. Just going to put the name of the place where you worked and the location and the title that you had and how long you worked there. So you don't have to get into the specifics of what your job duties were, because you will have already incorporated those strengths and that experience in that previous portion.
And you want to start with your most recent job, is that correct?
Yes, yeah. You always start with the most recent and then go backwards.
What about work experience that may not be relevant to the position that you're applying for?
That's okay. That's okay. It's better than having gaps on your resume anywhere. So especially when you're chronologically listing your work history, if you have these gaps, that's going to be harder for you to explain versus, it's okay that you've gone in a different direction and you've had jobs in a different industry. That's actually fairly normal in the restaurant industry to have worked somewhere else and then changed. So it's okay. Also, if you've ever worked for a company for a specific period of time, chefs like to see that dedication, where you've been committed to, a specific company. So in that, again, it doesn't matter if it was in the restaurant industry or not, because it speaks to who you are as an employee. So that's why I said it's icing on the cake.
Well, I really, really appreciate this. There's been a lot of good information. I get all the sections and how they relate to each other. What about length? Is there any guideline? Is too long, too short? Anything there, and then anything else that you would say just as a general guideline?
Yeah. Well, as far as length goes, you definitely want to still keep it to one page. Traditionally, a chef doesn't have the time to turn the page, and you're already trying to convince them just to get to the bottom of the page and give you a call. A lot of times, chefs are even going through these resumes on their lunch break. So again, just keep it really powerful, concentrated, and concise, and keep it to one page. And then, just some other general stuff is just to make sure that it's error-free. I mean, sometimes you can, read it, reread it, and proof it and still not catch something. Or spell check may not catch something. So it's a good idea if you can get somebody else to read it again for you. just get that extra set of eyes to read over it one more time, which is what I often do for a lot of our students as well. Just be, concise, just stay to the point. Again, going back to the menu, if it has too many items, then you just get confused about what you're going to order. Again, just stay to the point, keep their interest, and just say the important facts on that piece of paper. This is you on a page. This is your one page to potentially get somebody's attention to bring you in for the interview. And then that's when you can actually elaborate a little bit more on things. And, we even said before, your interview, you're going to have to back up everything that's on that piece of paper. So just kind of stay to the point and make sure it's error-free and professional. Students like to kind of come up with fun, different ways to format it in different fonts, and that's perfectly all right as long as it's very legible and easy to read, and that you don't get so creative that it distracts away from the information that's in it, and you'll be good.
Fair enough.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.